I know we've always laughed about these, but these are my Radio Shack Realistic Omnis. They cost like $20. They're called 1070s, I think. If you get the ones that are made in Japan, they're better than the ones made in Mexico. Sorry, my brown people, but I'm just being honest with you. Mic locker, which I've already explained. I moved my studio, so I've got these really cool cases. I actually really love them. They're called SKB cases. These are old. They don't really make them anymore. I don't think you can find them, but they open up. This one is a beater, and it has a compartment in here. So I have some little lavaliers in here, but you might as well start with this one. This is my David Bowie AKG D1000. If you look at pictures of like Ziggy Stardust tour, he has these. This is my Chavez Ravine 58. As weird as it sounds, because I have really cool mics, my own voice sucks on expensive mics, and it really makes me sad that I'll spend some money on a nice mic and think I'm going to sing on my own record, and I realize that the 58 is the only thing that sounds good with me. So this is the Manny mic, the one with the clown nose on it. A kind of smaller vintage mic case, SKB as well. I put the cables in here. This mic is my, I guess it's maybe 50s, but it's a RCA BK5. This mic basically is what Soundgarden used on their guitars. I was lucky enough to go over to Daniel Lanois's house, and he was singing his new record. This was his vocal mic. And also, it's just one of the greatest ribbon mics. It's a ribbon mic. It's totally ridiculous in how good this mic is. It's expensive. Oh, and I also have something that's cool with that. Oh, I actually have the pop filter, which goes on top of that, which is really cool. This is a very rare and expensive Beyer 380. These used to be a few $100. They've gone up in price because they're figure 8. You use them for bass guitar and kick drum. Because they're figure 8, you put it in the kick drum. It gets the beater side, and then it gets the side on the outside shell. And because it's figure 8, it's picking up both of the patterns. Super incredible mic, if you can find a real one. But also, the reason they stopped making these is that there's actually headphone capsules inside, and Beyer had a brand, I think they were called 770s or something like that. When they ran out of the company that was making their headphones for these, they stopped making these. So you can buy a Beyer TG-X50, I think, identical body, and if you can find the right headphones, you can have Cole Picks in Nashville refurbish your X50 with the 380, and then now you have a $1,000 mic for a few $100. Then I'm always talking about my AKG D224E. It's one of the greatest mics I've ever used. It has two elements in it, one in the top, one in the bottom. So as you put this up on a sound source, you get some cancellation. And the quality of this engineering, it weighs a ton. It's like a mini submarine of quality. It's like a Rolex or something. It just sounds incredible. It's one of my favorite mics. It's a dynamic. Then a must-have for any studio is a Beyer 201. Greatest guitar mic, snare, really great. Like if I have 3 amps up and there's like a banging drummer next door and everybody's making a lot of noise and I put the amp next to the drums, there'll be no drums in this mic, and it just has a great cancellation all around it, but it picks up a great guitar sound. It's a Beyer 201. This is my Frank Sinatra AKG D24. The internals are an AKG D19, which are triple the price of this, but this has a bulb on it. If you look at some old Frank Sinatra records, he was singing in it, and that's the mic he was using. It's called the Frank Sinatra mic. This mic, on its sonicness, is incredible. On a female or woman's voice, I haven't found anything that's made me happier than this mic. So a lot of times when I have a super low bassy crooner, or even someone that has like kind of like Kim Deal mid-range, when I use the Frank Sinatra, it just makes me really happy. And this mic, you can find an AKG D24. I'm going to say $600 to $700 is the average for this one. Problem is, you have to make sure it's working. I know it sounds dumb, like why would I buy a mic that wasn't working? Because you read the small print And the guy's always like, well, used to have low end, but you know those old mics. Well, guess what? If it doesn't have any low end, it's ruined and they're hard to find. So if you get one, make sure it's from a reliable source, or you get it from Cole Picks in Nashville, or your buddy that has a trust fund, he has a lot of mics and he bros you down a cool mic. So that's the AKG D24. The tried and true, everybody should have a Sennheiser 421. For years, this was my kick drum mic. I mean, when I first used this on kick drum, I didn't like it. Producer friend of mine named Robert Carranza, every time I walked up, he had this on the kick drum. And he's one of the best engineers in the city. So I'd be like, okay, I gotta be like Robert Carranza. I gotta get my 421, make it work on the kick. And then suddenly one day my ears just went, oh, that sounds great. And then I was able to move it within the hole, outside the hole, in the front, down. I just got wonderful results on toms, guitars, vocals. You can't go wrong with that, except this clip. That's where you go wrong. You grab it like that, and it falls off, and your mic falls and breaks. I have two of these. I think one may be in another case. These are Russian 80s ribbons. They're called Octava 19s. They're all in Russia, and they're $100, $200. They're not a lot, but they don't sound good. Because I re-ribbon my own ribbons and I work on these microphones, you can make these microphones where they sound as good or better. The BK5s are now going up to about $2,000. This is $200. When I put these back to back, there's a little bit more low end in this and a little bit more fidelity. I can only say that I love these microphones and they're affordable, but you do have to get them serviced. You just go buy this mic for cheap, re-ribbon it, and then now you get close to BK5 without spending, you know, you can get a used Honda or you get a BK5, you know. I got a BK5. You should see my car. This mic is an EV, a 667A. This is what you would have used on Cream. If you look at the old videos of Cream, or John Bonham, this was kind of the precursor to the RE20, but these were like on hi-hats, on the toms, on the kick drum. Whenever you see Cream playing, this was it. I have this mic because it's incredible, and once again, it's just another tool in the toolbox, but I really reach for this when I want another hi-hat or a tom or something where no one's going to really bang it or break it, but it's a classic and it really sounds incredible. Next up, Altec, call it 633A. My friend Thomas Scriven done a session with Ross Robinson, and if you don't know Ross, look him up. He's done he was like the first guy that did Slipknot, Korn, you name it, Ross is like the man. And he had a really eclectic group of microphones this is actually, honestly, why I got into Manny's mic locker. I went to my friend Thomas's house and he was recording. He says, you got to use all these mics that Ross, he bought all the same mics that Ross had used. And, ego aside, I had my own set of mics, but I was like, well, let's find out what Ross uses and let's see if we like them. Well, the first mic Ross used was on the hi-hat, was this AKG D224E. I just talked about it. When I got back to my studio and I listened to the hi-hats, I'd never heard hi-hats sound so good. Even when they're crashing them or washing them, they were it sounded like The Faces by Rod Stewart, which means that, that's a total Beatles mic, so that's definitely 60s. But Ross had this on the guitars, and it's an Omni. Looks like something you would see on a Doors session. I'm sure it is. It's 50s. It's the 50s Altec. 633A Omni. This on a guitar with a 57 or 421 or BK5. Can only say that this is like a smog clearer. If you have a 57, you can imagine it being surrounded with smog. You push this up and the wind blew away all that foggy fuzziness and weird stuff, and you get the essence of the amp and the speaker. And that's what this mic does. It's, once again, like all the Altecs and AKGs. My buddy bought 10 of these and he was stoked. And as he tested them, only 2 of them worked properly. You can clean them. You can bring them back from the dead. But you have to buy them from a reputable source, or once again, Kohl's, and I'm blabbing your name up. If Kohl has one for sale, it's working. But this one is immaculate. It sounds incredible. Definitely one of my favorite mics, and it's vintage. Don't laugh, but this is a cheap copy of a 57. My buddy gave this to me and he's like, dude, you gotta get a pile. I'm like, why? Because it's a copy of a 57 and costs $12. I'm like, okay. I haven't tried it yet. I'll let you know how that goes and I'll do an A-B. But yeah, this is like one of those Amazon things where maybe it's even $6. Who knows? But it looks just like a 57. This is the Sound Deluxe U95. I think they were trying to make a U87. And I think they did it wrong. I don't know what happened. But this became the Bach 195. And I think they still make these. But for whatever reason, I got an anodized black one, which I've never seen. But it is a Sound Deluxe U95. Has a switch on the back that says low cut, on or off. Then it has a mode that's fat or normal. And then you have a pad. And this, minus me currently using the United on the kick drum, their FET 47, or the Alien 8 on a kick drum. Prior to that, this was my ultimate kick drum mic. So a Sound Deluxe U95, I would put it on fat mode, and then I'd put it on low cut, which, does that make sense? Like you're adding all this low end and then you're cutting off the low end? Well, it just basically cut off unwanted boominess, but gave me everything that I want in a blooming big kick drum. So if you can find a Sound Deluxe or an older Bach U95, you cannot go wrong. And also one of the greatest vocal mics I've had, I did Michael Lemo, which is a local artist. This was his vocal mic on all his records. And if he whispers, screams, or sings, this mic never buckled, which makes me think that maybe they did, and maybe I'm not hearing it, of how a lot of people compare this mic to a U87. I've had this mic maybe 10 years. I don't use it as much as I used to. Obviously, I have these other mics, but sometimes, you know, when my drummer Phil comes in, I just want to get a classic Manny sound. I use this on the kick drum, and it just, whew, it is so massive. Anything Sound Deluxe is really cool. Well, this is my trusty handy Shure. 10-4 good buddy. What's going on? Everybody's bored out of their mind on the Manny mic locker. Let's get out of here. Where we're going to go eat at? In-N-Out. In-N-Out on Manny. Anyways, this is my 10th session relaxer. If I have a singer and they're just not getting it, I put this in their hand. I put the big mic in front of them and they're holding this, and then all they hear is this mic. And it just, oh my God, they feel like they're the Cramps, they're Iggy Pop. They're, you know, just really, something about grabbing it and screaming in it just makes them feel so much power, and they get great performance. And then I use this mic to capture it, so, and I can blend them together. But yeah, this is one of my also little secret weapons. And if you can find them, I want to say for whatever reason, I found them with that being the wrong side. I just bought an adapter that makes it correct, so you can plug it into a preamp directly. Shure makes them. Awesome. All right. Hold them up. What's going on here? Who broke your 57s? Well, these aren't. These are Unidyne 56s. We're talking Van Halen. And speaking of Ross Robinson, his snare for Korn and all the bands, he's got vintage 56s on them. These are awesome. They don't sound like 57s. They have, I think they sound louder, and they've just got a sound, probably because of the magnets inside. But yeah, got two of them, snare, guitars. I'm stoked. Now here's something that's interesting in the AKG department. This is called a P48. And in the series of, I know some people talk really weird, like, oh, I hate 414s. I love 414s, but I'm only talking about their origins of the 414. A C12A, which is made by AKG, is one of the greatest tube mics on earth, the grandfather of this. Then they went to the EB, which is not the tube version, but the FET or the solid state version of the C12. And the EB had a brass capsule in it. People make a big deal about the brass capsule because they were replaced later with a nylon capsule. But the truth was, the capsules failed a lot. So if you see an EB with a nylon capsule, that could be factory. They literally just take them, throw away the brass capsule, put in a nylon capsule, and it's great. And they're cheaper. They sound different. This one, so it goes C12A, EB, And then when they went from EB, they went to the P48, which is this true Phantom 48. The new 414s could probably work off a 9-volt battery. These ones, they need full phantom power. And these are killer mics. I had the capsule nylon replaced with the brass capsule. In a P48, I mean on the bottom of the snare, on the top of the snare, like the Peluso P414, it gives me that classic feeling of what a great microphone is. So if you can find, and you look on the top and it says P48, that is one of the greatest series of all those 414s. So look for a P48, all the same features of a normal 414, except the electronics are completely different from BULS 414, completely different. So whatever they did, they got it right, put a brass capsule in it, and now you're closer to an EB. This little mic right here, you can even see it, that is a microphone. It's called an SM98. I was turned on to these by, it may have been Garth Richardson, but in the old days, they used to put these on toms and loud instruments. These were like the holy grail of new companies because there were condensers that run off this. You plug them into here. Needs phantom power. The lavaliers, but they use them for toms. When I went and recorded with Steve Albini, the first record, and he showed me how to record, he always had these hanging over the beater. And he had one of these taped to a Buyer 201 for the snare. And I didn't know, I really didn't get it. So when I bought my first studio, I bought all the same mics. I used to tape this to the snare, but at the time, maybe now I'd hear the difference, but back then I didn't really get it. But when I put this now over the beater and I hang it over the drum, and then you blend it with an outside mic, it's incredible, it's godly. And then if I use this on bass guitar rig with a drummer in the room, once again, huge sounding. And I heard that this is the mic, and SM98 was what Rage uses on their bass rig. Also, I heard like the Muse uses SM7s, which I have an SM7, I think, in there. But for bass rig, my go-to is a lavalier SM98 by Shure. On the beater side, hanging over the drums, taped to the drum, right above the beater. SM98, and basically anywhere you would want to use a small condenser, even on a snare, this mic is incredible. Now there's different types. This is an old one. I don't know the numbers on the new one, but this is an SM98. That's it. The new ones are like SM something dash something 98s or beta 98s maybe, but those are still killer. And like any studio, of course, I've got normal 57s. You just got to have them. I love them. Got another one, so I guess I got 3. Counting the 56, you can have a studio without having a SM7. I don't think this is the vintage one, or whatever the case. Everybody makes a big deal about it. You need a really good preamp with this. If you buy one of these and you put this in your UA, you're like, what's the big deal? But if you buy one of these and you've got Neves, or you got APIs, or you got old Altex, or you just got a big old RCA compressor, these mics rule. I did, the Breeders record was the first time I was really exposed to these, where Kim used these for overheads, for kick drum. The Muse, I think, uses these on bass guitar. You just can't go wrong with it. And for vocals, of course, you know, they're just great. The Muse, all those songs, this is the vocal mic. You'd be shocked on a kick drum how good this sounds. And because it takes such high sound pressure to make it even the needle move on these, putting it in front of a loud sound source like a guitar is not a problem. It may even save you on your preamps. But just know that if you get one of these, even though they're a few $100, like if you go to Guitar Center, they're not really selling you these. They want you to buy the latest flavor of the month and spend $1,200. Buy one of these brand new for $400. Get a cloud lifter or get a good preamp, and you have Michael Jackson, Metallica vocals. Across the board, how many bands have used this? Probably every big cool band in the world, they've used SM7. So I can't say enough about this mic.